Welcome to Real Talk, Indiana's premier talk show on real estate investing, where we talk each week about investing your money right here in Central Indiana. The tips, tricks, do's, and don'ts, brought to you by CIREIA, Central Indiana's oldest and largest real estate investing association. Hello there, my name is Vicki Perry, and I'm the Executive Director of CIREIA. We have over 600 members, all active in or learning how to be active in real estate here in the Indiana market. This radio show is available on FM 95.9, AM 950, podcast on YouTube, and www.cireia.org. Join us each week as we talk about how you can make your money more active with better returns and help the community that you live in with real estate done the right way. Now, on with the show.
And welcome. My name is Ron Watson, and I'm the board president for CIREIA, Central Indiana Real Estate Investors Association. This is CIREIA's weekly show where we talk about investing in real estate the right way. Our show will help you finally get started investing in real estate by presenting you with the practical information you need to be successful. Whether you're a seasoned investor or just learning, we'll help you get to the next level and find the path that's right for you. Last week, we talked to Vicki Perry, Executive Director for CIREIA and board member for the Indiana State REIA. If you missed that episode, you can listen to it on the CIREIA channel on YouTube or tune into it on our website, www.cireia.org, on the calendar of events. Joining us again today is one of the most successful wholesalers in Central Indiana, who did 354 deals, to be exact, last year with the simple wholesaling team, Brett Snodgrass, and welcome again, Brett.
Always a pleasure to be here, Ron.
Also joining us is one of our CIREIA vendors. He's a real estate note investor, president, and founder of Bright Path Notes, Mr. Justin Bogart. Welcome, Justin.
Thanks, Ron, Brett, for having me here.
Happy to have you here. And also on the phone from sunny Florida is Mr. Joe Vernador, nationally recognized expert in the mortgage note industry and longtime partner in the note school. How are you doing today, Joe?
I'm doing very well, guys. It's beautiful here in Florida this morning.
Well, we're so happy to hear that, right?
Yeah. You need to push some of that up here in the Midwest.
I know you're coming up here in the near future, so we look forward to seeing you. So I thought just to get started, we'd talk a little bit about Justin and your background. I know that the importance of finding the right investment strategy in our industry and having the right coach is important. Justin, can you just share some of your investment experience with us?
Sure, Ron. Thanks. So back in 2004, I actually bought my first home. It was a HUD home, and I'd planned on doing some light renovations to it and lived there for a few years. And then, because I had no experience, I decided to sell it, when the market crashed back in 08, 09. And so I had a real estate agent help me out with selling the property and helped me staged it and kind of figured out kind of some mechanisms to help sell it. And I couldn't believe that I sold it within 24 hours, and I actually made a profit on it. And I was like, wow, this is incredible.
Easy stuff, right?
Oh, yeah.
Piece of cake.
I was like, is this normal? He's like, no. I was like, this is great. So I got the bug right then and there for real estate. So I had an affinity for real estate right then and there. Continued on to do that with a couple of homes I lived in. Established that sweat equity and eventually invested into myself and got some real estate education and learned how to do wholesale deals and did some fix and flips and actually brought some properties down to the studs and fixed them back up, which, I can't believe that worked out the way it did. And did some rentals, and then I kind of ran into Joe Varndor, kind of came into my life a few years after that and really changed the way that I think about real estate investing. And so I remember back when I bought that home in 04, I was talking with my dad, and I was like, Dad, I'm getting this house for $95,000. I'm getting this loan from the bank, and it was like a 6% interest rate back then, and for 30 years, and it was like $570 payments, and I was doing the math. I'm like, this doesn't make sense. I was like, is this right? $570 over 360 months, that's like $200,000 I'm giving the bank. He's like, yep, power of interest. I'm like, okay. So that I started to remember that conversation now, knowing, I was like, man, I really want to be the bank. That sounds much more lucrative than what I'm doing now, because I just wasn't built for the rehabbing business or the wholesaling business like some of the other folks. And so, I invested again in myself through the Note School program, and really developed a keen knowledge on buying performing and non-performing notes, and started my business that way. So fast forward to today, I'm buying performing, non-performing notes, residential, commercial, business loans, first and second liens. It's just amazing what's out there. And, we're getting these from hedge funds and banks, and even private sellers is actually where a lot of our market, we're getting a lot of our notes from as well. So that's where we are today.
That's cool, man. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. I know that it's always astonishing when I got my first mortgage and you see that really long amortization table that's 30 years out, and seeing how much money you're paying to the bank. So good strategy. Let's move on to you, Joe. So I know you're sitting probably on the beach somewhere right now in sunny Florida with the wind
Absolutely.
whipping around and just soaking up the sun. But I know you've been in real estate investing for a long time, and you also have several students actually here in central Indiana. So I want to know, how did you get to this point, and why are so many students attracted to you and your education and your program?
Very good. Well, first of all, thanks for having me this morning. But today is Justin's 40th birthday. So,
we need to sing "Happy Birthday." No, I'm just kidding.
That's his birthday
After the
present.
air.
We won't do that.
there you go. And a very smart man, I think it was Albert Einstein, once said that compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. If you understand it, you earn it. If you don't, you pay it. So there you go. My story goes back a little further than Justin's does. I bought my first property when I was 19 years old, and that was back in 1978. So it was a long time ago. So I think that gives us about 40 years. So you must have been born in 1978, Justin.
I was just looking at over there at the guys, and it's going the same thing. So
Joe bought his first house on your birthday, your actual
There you
birthday.
go. That's
do you still
right.
have that house, Joe?
Yeah. So when I started and I did a lot of buy, fix, and sell, and did some landlording and that kind of thing. But I discovered in 1990, the note business kind of in a roundabout way, and it made me it gave me a whole different perspective on the real estate business. So when I discovered that, and really since 1990 until today, I've done well over 10,000 notes, whether they're non-performing or performing. So I've been around the block doing that, and it's been a great experience. That's one of the things that people just don't know about. It's one of those niches that they kind of think, yeah, notes, but really, what is a note? And I know we're going to talk about that in just a few minutes and kind of go through that, but it's everybody thinks it's kind of a separate piece than real estate, but when you think about it, we were just talking about mortgages. Pretty much every real estate deal that's done out there includes some type of note, some type of paper, whether it's a bank loan or seller financing or whatever it is. So it's a very integral part of everything that we do as real estate investors. So, it's just one of those things that, and especially today with the 800-pound gorilla in the room is, in a lot of places, is the lack of investing. And we see all the predictions for interest rates going up in 2018, and inventory continuing to go down. So it's just another strategy to help you develop and to keep your current real estate business moving forward.
Okay, so I that's some really good information, and I know we have a number of people that listen that are not as experienced in real estate investing. Maybe they want to just get started, and so this might be new information for them. So just kind of backtrack a little bit and give me a little bit more detail on really what you're talking about when you're talking about a note.
Yeah, so when so let's say we go out and we're looking for a piece of property, and we decide we're going to need a loan to buy that, which most people are. So we buy the property, or we make our deal on the property, and then the second thing we have to go in is make our deal on the financing. So everybody's kind of familiar with it's like buying a car. You sit down, you make your deal on the car, then you sit down with a finance manager, and you take care of that. So when you make that deal and when you decide how you're going to finance that property, you go to a closing. And everybody out there, if you've bought your first home or if you haven't done so, you go in and you sit down at a table. Typically, it's going to be an attorney's office or a title company, and you sign a lot of documents. Promise me, I promise you. I always say it's like sitting in front of a Las Vegas blackjack dealer, right? They're throwing documents at you to sign like nobody's business. And the most important document in that pile of documents is the promissory note, the IOU. Most people know that as the term is a mortgage, right? So you sign that agreement, and what you've done is you've signed to pay a certain payment. As in Justin's deal there, he agreed to pay $570 a month for 30 years. So the other part of that is you sign that mortgage note, and then you agree to start paying. So the way to put it into perspective, you've got after closing, the buyer owns the house, and they also hold the deed to the property. And I kind of like to say that when you buy a car and you finance the car, you drive away with obviously the car and the car keys, but you don't get the title to the car until you pay for it, right? So with real estate or with a real estate note, you own the house. You also have the deed, and what the bank owns is the note, the promissory note, your agreement to pay back whatever it is you've borrowed over a period of time. So when we're talking about being in the note business or the paper business, we're talking about buying and selling the paper behind that, the promissory note. Now, sometimes people there are two types of notes. There's a performing loan, which is a loan that trades that the borrower's paying as agreed. They're paying their monthly payment. And then because of all the crazy stuff that happened back in, between 2004 and 2007, 8, 9, there became a lot of non-performing loans. And, Brett and I were talking before the show started there, and, he were talking about buying REO properties, real estate-owned properties down here in South Florida over by Fort Myers. And that's kind of what happened back then was the banks were foreclosing and then selling the properties.
Joe, hold on just one second. You're raising some really interesting topics that I want to dive into in a lot more detail. I have a feeling there's a way for the listeners to make some money, but we need to take a quick break, and we'll be back right after this with a lot more information. Thanks very much. And welcome back to Real Talk. I am Ron Watson, president of the board of directors, and today we're talking to Justin Bogard, Joe Vernador, and Brett Snodgrass, all very successful real estate investors. Myself, I'm just the host of the show, apparently. So, anyway, Joe, you were talking a lot about some really interesting information related to notes. You mentioned the term performing and non-performing. Why don't you just kind of pick up from there and give the listeners a little bit more information on those topics?
Yeah, that's great. So, the bottom line here is what I learned when I got into the note space was that I learned that I could be the bank versus being the landlord. So let me tell you quickly, and then we're going to pass it over to Justin here, and he's going to tell us some of his experience. But so think about it like this, guys. You've got on a performing loan, what you're doing is you're making a passive investment. So, Brett, you've done a lot of wholesale deals, and so you are used to you do that all the time. And with a performing loan, you're just buying a cash flow, and it's totally passive. Doesn't require much work. So, and the way I liken the performing side of the business is simply this: you've got if you're a landlord, you've got a monthly check coming in. You still have to manage the property, and you still have all of that. So let's liken that to a performing note. When you buy a performing real estate note, you're becoming the bank versus being the landlord. So basically, you've still got the cash flow coming in every month, but you don't have the challenge of owning the property and dealing with the tenant. Now, on the other side of that is the non-performing space. And the non-performing space just simply means the borrower has stopped making their monthly payments, and that was just all something that fell out from the mortgage meltdown. We know that people could get a mortgage if they could fog a mirror and they had a pulse, you could get a loan to buy real estate, right? And you could even fib about what you made just by stating your income. So anyway, we have all of this pile of non-performing loans. So bottom line with that, and one of the questions I always get is, so gosh, why would anybody want to buy a loan that's not paying? Well, it's because we're buying it at about 25 to 50% of what the as-is value of the property is. So just think about this. You're buying a house, an ugly house, right? And I remember my first ugly house like it was yesterday, right? And it was 40 years ago. So you're buying an ugly house. You buy it. You fix it. And then you can either resell it and for cash, or you can hold on to it as a rental. Well, when you're buying a non-performing loan, you're buying an ugly house, or you're buying an ugly loan. So you modify that loan. You get the borrowers paying again, and then you've got a cash flow. You can sell the cash flow. You can keep the cash flow. It's an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing. So let's kind of flip it over to Justin and let him kind of tell us what his experience has been with performing and non-performing.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Great job explaining all that, going into those details. So performing notes are great, getting that passive income, and you can get real complicated, and you can split things up within a note called partials and make things really complex, and it's a great way to build your wealth and create cash flow. And then the non-performing space is just, opportunities for just enormous returns where, like Joe said, you're getting somebody's mortgage or note that isn't paying, and they could be delinquent a couple years. They could be delinquent 90 days. That's what we really consider a non-performing note, is the 91st day they don't make a payment. That's considered non-performing in our industry, and anything below that is either sub-performing or performing. And so there's just so many opportunities to make money in non-performing notes because you're buying them for, let's just say, pennies on the dollar sometimes, and you focus on looking at what the current property state is, what the value of it is, and what you're paying for that asset, knowing that you're either going to be able to work out a remodification with the borrower, or you're going to take the property back through foreclosure or get a deed in lieu. And you can really, if you get lucky and the borrower, is willing to cooperate and remodify the loan, that's when your yields really go up and skyrocket. So it's a great investment strategy on the non-performing space.
Well, and the other part of that, and the way we look at this, when you buy a non-performing loan, you're gonna do one of three things. There's only three outcomes here. One is you can modify it for the borrower, and I know everybody on that's listening to the call today has probably heard somebody say, "Yeah, I've lived in my house for the last 5 years and hadn't made a payment." And we all go, "Oh my gosh, can that be true?" And yeah, it is true. It's happening out there every day. And simply the reason that is because the banks just decided to not foreclose on these particular asset classes. So we're either going to modify it and have a reperforming loan, or we're going to get the property. Either through a deed in lieu of foreclosure, meaning the borrower's just saying, "Hey, I give up, you can just have the property," and maybe we'll give them a little cash for doing that, or we have to foreclose. So, it's about 40% of the time when you buy a note, you're going to get a reperforming loan that you can collect the cash flow or sell the cash flow, or you're going to get the property. And if you end up with the property, you're going to get it at, about 25 to 50% or 50 to 75% of current as-is value. So, you're buying them pretty cheap. You got a property that has a current value of $100,000. You're going to be in it at somewhere between 25 and 50% of value. So it's an amazing thing. And one of the other things I always hear is that, real estate seems easy. The bricks and mortar side of the business, notes sounds complicated. And, basically that can't be further from the truth. And Brett, you've done a lot of wholesale, and that's wholesaling a house, right? Getting the house under contract and reselling that. And guys, just understand that, if you don't have a whole lot of money to get started, you can wholesale a note just as easily as you can wholesale a property. It's nothing more than getting the note under contract and then, assigning that note, or flipping is one of the sexy terms today, right, guys? Flip or flop and all this kind of stuff. So
That's true. That's a buzzword out there in the real estate investing industry.
Absolutely.
And Obviously, I think the complications come from people just don't have the knowledge of notes. There's so much information out there about real estate, and they can search for houses on the MLS or other websites and for sale by owner websites, and it's really easy to find houses for sale. But I guess I don't know where I would begin. So I am interested in buying some notes. Where do I start? Is there an MLS for notes out there, or where do I buy these at?
That's a great question. Justin, do you want to kind of field that, or you want me to kind of give my piece, and then you can give your piece?
Yeah, I can field that, absolutely. So where I get most of my inventory is from dealing with hedge funds. So they're large Wall Street firms, or they're medium-sized firms that have, $100 million to play with, and they're buying REOs, and they're buying performing and non-performing notes with that. And so they typically have websites, and they have exchange sites to where people can post their notes, and they also post their own notes on those websites as well. And then there's always banks. Banks have loans for sale. They're a little more difficult to get into. You kind of have to know somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody to get into a bank. But it still can happen. And I get a lot of my notes from private sellers. So I'll go, just like real estate strategies that we do for wholesaling or buying houses, is we do direct mail campaigns, and we'll figure out who has recorded these land contracts, like in Indiana, that's pretty popular, in mortgages, and we'll go advertise to those sellers and be like, hey, did you know you can sell this note? I can give you cash for this note, kind of like cash for keys. And you really find that's a niche in the note business right now that's not being capitalized on, and that's where we're finding a lot of our notes is that type of inventory right there.
And Justin, just kind of fill in on that. So, if I'm out and with Note School, I'm out and I do a couple of times a month. I'll do a talk for 100, 150, 200, 300 people, and I'll say, hey guys, how many of you are in the note business? And they'll kind of look at me like I have three heads, and then I'll say, so how many of you have bought a house using seller financing, where the seller's financed it for you? And if you will raise their hand, I'll say, well, how many of you have sold a house using seller financing, or whatever that is? So if I've got a room of 100 people, I've got 5 people in there that are familiar with the note business, and 95% of the folks, or 95% of the people, aren't. So when I see that, I know that, and typically in today's marketplace, whether it's whether you're a wholesaler or you're a buy, fix, and sell person, or you're looking for rental properties, it's getting tougher and tougher. Now, obviously, Brett's not having much of a problem doing that with 354 deals, right?
Yeah.
But it's a problem for a lot of investors that don't have that hasn't put together the systems that Brett did, and so that's kind of what we do at Note School. Is we put those systems together, and we show you basically how to go out and find a performing loan, and how to find a non-performing loan. And our sister company that's been in business since 1980, Colonial Funding Group. As a Note School student, folks can buy performing, non-performing notes directly from Note School.
So gentlemen, just hold on just a second, Joe. I just want to make sure that there's a question I've been dying to ask, and you guys kind of mentioned it. We only have a couple minutes in this segment, but do you need money to do this? You talked about you can offer cash to buy a note, but do I have to have a bunch of cash sitting around? If I don't, am I able to get involved in this process?
Well, as I said before, you can wholesale a note, and we all know that a lot of real estate investors, that's where they start, because they don't have a whole lot of money and they don't have a whole lot of experience. So you can get a note under contract and flip the note, just as you can get a house under contract and flip the house. So if you don't have any money or very little money to get started, no, you don't have to have it. If you're going to do a buy, fix, and sell on a property, you've got to have, you can borrow the money from somebody to do it, or you can, or you have it yourself. And when you buy either a performing or a non-performing note, and you end up with the house, you can find that money. And what I've seen today is kind of an interesting phenomenon, especially with hard money lenders and private lenders. They're getting to be more willing to loan to buy a note than they are to buy a house, and they feel like it's a little less risk for them to loan to a new note investor than it is to loan on a house to somebody that's never fixed a house and flipped it, because it's much easier to fix a note than it is to fix a house. So no, you can start with almost nothing, or you can have a whole bunch of money.
Well, that's good because I don't have a whole bunch of money yet. So that's a great place for me to get started. So this kind of leads us to another topic I want to get into after this break, which is, coaching and mentoring, and how do we teach people to get involved, and because it seems like there's a lot of information that I just don't know about this process, and a lot of our listeners may not as well. So we want to get into that after this break. Also, I hope you guys are prepared, we have a hot seat segment coming up. I know it's just we try to drop that on the last minute, and then and also we'll need a tip of the week. All this information is coming right after this message. And welcome back to Real Talk. I am Ron Watson, president of the board of directors, and today we're speaking with Justin Bogard, Joe Vernador, and Brett Snodgrass. And I know we wanted to kind of get back into, Justin, where you and Joe met and kind of how that relationship started, and I think there's a lot of good information related to that. Do you kind of pick up from there for me?
Sure, yeah. So Joe and I met a few years back at the local CIREIA meeting. And he came into town and was speaking about mortgage notes, and I was like, "What the heck is this guy talking about? Mortgage notes? Why would I invest in that?" And then it brought me back, like in the earlier segment when I was talking about the house and how much I was paying the bank, and going, "I'm in the wrong business. These guys aren't doing anything. They don't have to fix a house. They don't have to fix a toilet, deal with tenants. They don't do anything. They just collect a check every month." And so I want to be in that part of the business. So I listened to what he had to say, and I was just, my eyes were wide open, my jaw dropped, and I was like, what am I doing, worried about taking this house to the studs when I can, this is suited for me because I'm more of a financial guy, and I like to deal with numbers, and I can look at I don't even have to look at the property. I just run the numbers, and I can do all that. So that's what Joe was kind of alluding to in this little teaser segment that he had. And then from there, I bought into a mentorship program through the Note School. And that's kind of where I met Joe and kind of established kind of a friendship with Joe now. And we've done actually a couple of private events together, and we're going to continue to do that in the future. I hope so, right, Joe?
Absolutely. Guys, Justin has really, he's been very, humble here, but Justin is really, he saw this and he jumped into it, and he's done a phenomenal job, as a lot of the folks from CIREIA has done. I mean, we've got a lot of great students, and they just kind of took what they were taught and went out and did it. And Justin's, like I said, I'm really proud of the way that he's grasped this. And
you bring a tear to his eye at this moment.
Joe, I'm crying, Joe, on my birthday.
It's like a son to you. Yeah. Hey, I want to really dive into your relationship even deeper. And, obviously Joe has been a mentor to you, Justin. Would you say that?
Absolutely, yeah.
And a coach. And I know a lot of times we go to networking events like CIREIA, and people listen, they take a lot of notes, and then they go home and they don't do anything about it. And one thing that you have done is you've really dived in, and what has brought back to my mind is when Joe was up there talking, you didn't know what a mortgage note was, you didn't know anything what he was talking about, and now you're doing this as a business. So what would you say to the person that is coming to a CIREIA event, the importance of having a mentor, the importance of having a coach, how they go out and find that person? What would you say to all those questions?
That's a really great question. I think all of us in this room can agree that we wouldn't be here today if we wouldn't have a mentor, somebody to guide us down the right path and kind of show us, no, don't do that, no, you should do this, and kind of help alleviate some of those early mistakes. I mean, I think we all make some mistakes when we first get into investing, but that's one of the great things I like about Note School is that they really give you a lot of information, almost too much information, but you kind of got to digest it, you got to practice it, and they show you ways to practice it, and they always are coaching, even the guys at the top level like Eddie Speed, who was the founder of Note School. He still shows deals to his other counterparts and says, hey, would we do this deal? Would we buy this portfolio? And it's just nice to know that even those guys at that level always have somebody to go to help them, to find a deal. And so there's going to be more, information about Joe coming to town here on May 19th and 20th at the Indiana State RIA that we're having. And I'm going to be there, and Joe's going to be there, and Joe, hopefully you got a nice presentation for everybody lined up, and I'm going to be there to support the note school program and also answer questions on, stuff that I've done in my business and how it works from there.
So awesome. So let's dive in. You talked about a date there, and I want everybody that's listening right now to put that on their calendars. You got May the 19th and May the 20th is the Indiana State RIA event. And what are a couple of things that you guys are going to go over with the Note School? What are people going to learn?
First of all, let me just say this, that you guys in Central Indiana, you Central Indiana RIA is guys. I'm going to brag on Miss Vicki Perry, who's the executive director, and you guys have done a great job. And for those of you that are listening today, if you're not a member of a real estate investment association, that's the one to go to, guys. I mean, it's amazing, and Ron being the president and Brett and all. I mean, it's an amazing space to go in and learn in a protected place, right? So I'm going to kind of go through the gamut of what is. I'll start out with what is a note, and we'll go into a little more depth than we've been able to do here today, and then we'll talk about non-performing loans, and we'll talk about performing loans and how you find them and how you do some of the due diligence. And guys, Brett, you've done a lot of deals, and you always do your due diligence, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
So I want to put that into perspective for you. And Justin, why don't you tell us about kind of what you learned in that first session that we did together and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so I kind of learned that I didn't know what I was doing, and I was
important.
I was in the wrong real estate part of the business. And I wanted to grow up. I wanted to be the deal architect. That's the key word that jumped out at me, was being the deal architect. It's the guy, I remember the slide that you showed, it was a guy carrying the wheelbarrow with all the money in it. I'm like, I want to be that guy. It goes back to the bank, that I talked about earlier in the first segment. But that's what stood out to me, and it just made sense. And then the due diligence part, I mean, it's just part of the learning curve of understanding how to underwrite a deal, how to look at a deal, value it, how you would price it, why you want to buy it, what are your exit strategies. I mean, very similar concepts and things that we do just on buying a house for a fix and flip or a rental. We're going over those numbers in our heads, and it's very similar. So that transition from real estate investor to note investor was actually pretty easy. It was understanding, about due diligence and deed of trust and mortgages and different types of instruments you're buying and why do you buy them, and like back to what Joe said, you're just fixing a problem on the paper. Your pencil is your tool.
Well, I've always said, Justin, it's easier to make money with a pencil than it is with a hammer.
Yeah, because you can just erase, right?
Yeah, that's right. I think that's so important because, Justin, you learned that fixing and flipping a house wasn't for you.
Exactly.
But there's a lot of people out there that is for them. They love to take a house and get their hands dirty and to make something ugly into something that's beautiful. But you're more of a numbers guy. You like spreadsheets. You like number crunching. And you're probably a math whiz, and you like formulas and all that.
I wouldn't know about that.
But. So I think it's great just to come and learn, and you're going to hear a lot of different things at this event just to see what strategy fits you. Wholesaling fits me. I love, flipping houses and selling them fast and making that quick nickel rather than that slow dime. And notes fit you. Fixing and flipping helps. Is a good fit for other people like Dave Short, one of our other co-hosts. And I think it's just, it's really important to find out real estate investing has so many different arenas, and what's yours right now? What is your strategy that you're going to fall in love with? And I think there's just so many opportunities. So
that's right.
That's great.
And Brett, you're exactly right. And when you look at the big picture, you don't know what you don't know. So you need to have not just one or two strategies. You need to have as many strategies as you can possibly get. And I always like to use the analogy that there's a whole lot of ways to eat an Oreo cookie, right? So depending on what method that is for you, well, there's a lot of different ways to do a real estate deal, and you're going to be much more successful if you have more strategies. And for those of you that really love to do, fix and flip, well, this is just another way to acquire properties at a bigger discount as well. So you got about a 40% chance of having a perfect note if you buy a non-performing or a reperforming note, but about 60% of the time you're going to get a property at a super discount.
Awesome.
This is one of the things I like to tell people that ask me about CIREIA is that, there is a lot more to real estate investing than just being a landlord, which is basically what I do because I'm not as creative as all these other people in the room. But yeah, I mean, when you come to a meeting like this and you get to learn that there's a whole nother world out there of real estate investing that you probably never knew about, and that people are really focused on, and they're really creative, and they're very knowledgeable, and they're willing to teach you. I mean, that's really exciting, and I think that's a shameless plug for CIREIA, but I mean, it's just really kind of cool to see all these things kind of come together. And so just talk a little bit more about your mentoring program, if you could, and coaching program. We only have about 3 minutes before we get you to the hot seat, so if you just give me a little bit of an idea of how that might work.
Sure. So you're making an investment into the Note School, and your investment includes all the criteria on how to find a deal, how to underwrite a deal, and how to sell a deal. And you get the opportunity to have your deals vetted by what we call a loan committee. So we'll bring on a webinar and we'll be able to talk about it. And so all the students that are in this group of Note School students, we all go to events with each other, and we all kind of know each other across the country. And this network is like invaluable, because I got a guy that called me from Colorado the other day and said, hey, Justin, I got a note in Indianapolis. Can you check this thing out for me? Can you give me some details about this street or this area? I'm like, yeah, sure. So it's just great to have that network right there alone. And then you have all these note veterans like Joe Varndor and Eddie Speed that you can send your deals to and be like, hey, I'm stuck right here. I don't understand this part of the agreement, or I don't understand, the borrower is having this sort of issue. What do you recommend? And they bring up a lot of good advice on how to exit your way out, or how to get something reperforming, or to better the borrower for their situation.
Yeah, that whole networking piece is so important in real estate investing, just in general, and to have people that you can talk to and rely on, and throw deals back and forth too. That's really invaluable, as you said. I wanted to get to the hot seat segment coming up next, but I did want to mention first. You mentioned that you're going to be at the Indiana State REIA, which is the Broadmoor Country Club in Indianapolis, and that's, if you haven't been there, it's on Michigan Road. Well, it's off of Michigan Road in Kessler. It's a very nice space where we have our regular CIREIA meetings, so just want to make sure everybody knew where that event was going to take place, and that's May 19th and May 20th. We'll be back in just a minute with a little bit more information from Joe and Justin, and we're going to get to the hot seat segment as well as a tip of the week, so we'll be back right after this. And welcome back to Real Talk. I'm Ron Watson, president of the board of directors of CIREIA, and I'm joined today by Justin Bogard and Joe Vernador, as well as Brett Snodgrass, and this is the segment that everybody fears, and it's the hot seat segment, so I hope you're all ready.
Is it hot in here?
It is, really.
Need a fan.
So I mean,
like I'm in Florida.
Well, Joe can tell us about that experience, but I know that we have a lot of people that come to town. They have programs that they offer. What makes your program different, better? Why should people spend the time, effort, energy to come see what you guys are doing?
Well, and that's a great question. I mean, I know CIREIA has different speakers come in, and the experts and all that kind of thing. But I think what we have people that really get engaged in this business, and it's you got to have somebody out there that you can count on a higher level, and we have a very very good success rate with people that actually get out and actually do it, and we encourage that, and that's the thing with having a coach, or having a mentor, somebody that can push you every day. And I just have to tell you this: I was in Boston here not long ago, and a lady comes up to me at an event I was doing, and she says, Joe, so I do day trading. I go, wow, that's great. I said, how long have you been doing it? She said, a couple of years. And I said, well, so are you making any money doing it? And she looked at me, and she says, oh, well, I haven't gone live yet. I'm still just paper trading. So,
wow. Let's get in the ring. Come on now.
Yeah, so, the whole thing is when you've got a company like Note School. We've been in the note business since 1980. So we've been in the note business a long time, buying and selling. And one of my mentors is Eddie Speed, and Eddie Speed started Colonial Funding Group, which is our funding arm, and then started Note School in 2003 actually. And just because we knew that there wasn't anybody out there that was really in the business. So when you're getting involved with somebody or some type of, organization, a training organization, make sure they do the business on a daily basis. And that's what we do. We're in there, we've got our sleeves rolled up, and we're just doing it every day. And we can teach it from a different perspective because we've, you don't know what the mistakes are until you make them, right? And if we can kind of shortcut that process, and we've made the mistakes and say, okay, don't make the mistake we made, and go from there.
Yeah, Joe, I would just add to that Note School goes kind of above and beyond as far as giving content and staying with you. They don't just, here's a booklet, read this workbook, and you should be fine, and see you later, thanks for your money. That's not what Note School is. Note School does a great job of staying with you, and it's keeping you engaged, and it's like a lifetime commitment, if you will. And so you always have somebody there to talk to and to get information from, and then having the other peers, the other students there to share it, because there's people, the CEO of FCI Exchange is a Note School student.
Wow. Right, and that's one of the servicers and so on. And the other part of that is we started a capital fund at Colonial, which is our note business, about 2.5 years ago, and we do have a deliverable. You can buy, if you don't want to go out and deal with the hedge funds or the banks directly, you can buy a performing, non-performing note directly from our fund. So we wanted to make it as easy as possible for somebody that wants to be in the note space to be able to find a note they can buy and act upon immediately, and that's the thing. That's the key to being able to act on something as soon as possible.
Such good advice, and your leader, Eddie Speed, good friend of mine actually, and I love Eddie, part of a mastermind group with Eddie, and he always so much wisdom with that man. Been doing this thing for years. But I think one thing that you said, Joe, was that you guys actually do the business, and I think that that's what separates you. A lot of teachers and educators come into town, but they're not doing the business anymore, and when they tell stories, they're telling a story that happened 7 years ago, 10 years ago, but you guys are actually doing it. And what's the saying that goes that people that can't do teach?
Right.
But I think, what goes further than that is you guys are doing and you are teaching, so you can really give right now in the present market advice. And I think that's so important. So I want to go to the next question, hot seat question. So you guys are partnering with CIREIA, and how does that fit into your mix of national coaches and your programs? How is CIREIA partnering and helping you guys out?
Well, what we found is that, by partnering with the group like CIREIA, and again, CIREIA is one of the best ran real estate investment associations in the United States. They're high-level stuff, guys. And with a partnership with somebody like, with a group like CIREIA, it just gives us a platform of people that are out there. They want to learn. They wouldn't be there if they didn't want to learn. And so instead of having just a bunch of big radio ads and filling into a big room and you've got all this gamut of people out there and you have no idea what you're dealing with, we have a very target audience with people that have been, they get advice from Ron and they get advice from Vicky and all the other membership there with CIREIA, and we just find it's a better and a safer environment than getting out there and just trying to blast this out to the multitudes. We want to deal with people that, are real and that want to actually get out there and do something with it. We see so many times that people buy a bunch of books and tapes and they never do anything with it. It's still in the cellophane wrapper, 3 years later.
Right.
So
yeah.
That's the thing with the RIA and having a subgroup and things like that and time.
Awesome. I think we got one more question for the hot seat, and then we're going to get to the tip. But the question that a lot of people ask is, what if they can't afford to get into the Note School or to buy a coaching program? Is there any other options out there that they can do to learn about this business?
Yeah, obviously our local CIREIA here has great information on anything to do with real estate, notes, wholesaling, fix and flipping, landlording, and what I find a lot of information on is Bigger Pockets, going to other websites that talk about notes, and then going to expos. They have national events. Seems like about 3 or 4 times a year there's a major event, somewhere close to our area here in Indianapolis. And that's where you get a lot of information. You can network with people and actually see vendors and talk to them and get information from them. And symposiums are another place too. And then obviously joint venturing with people as well, partnering up with people that are in the business. And that's another good way to get more information and to kind of get experience without having to pay the price.
Yeah. Awesome. Great resources there, guys. So take notes of that.
Yeah, we really appreciate that. That's some really great information. I think there's a lot more that we could get into here, and you really raised my. And I've seen you speak before, Joe and Justin, and I just still there's a lot more that I could certainly learn. I want to make sure that we do a couple things before we end the show today, and that is if you gentlemen have a tip of the week, we usually like to ask that of our guests. So Justin, do you have something you want to share?
Yeah, well, my dad used to always tell me, he's like, Justin, don't eat yellow snow. He's like, that's your tip. So I don't think that's really appropriate for the real estate investing world.
It works,
but,
Hey.
Today I haven't ate yellow snow. I look at it, I'm not eating that. So I would say just if you get into a jam in real estate, always consider seller financing as a possible tool to buy and or sell a property, because selling a property on terms can be actually pretty valuable, and that's something that Joe is going to go over on the 19th and 20th at the Indiana State CIREIA convention, and I'll be there to explain things as well. And Joe, you got another tip you want to add?
Well, and this is more general. Guys, as I said, you've got to get out there and you've got to engage. I mean, people say, you hear a lot of these gurus and folks say, oh, yeah, it's easy. Guys, it's not easy. But you do have to engage, whether it's notes or it's wholesaling or it's flipping houses or whatever it is. Engage in something. Engage in it, go out there and do it, and you got to pull the trigger at some point in time, or just you shouldn't be in it at all, right? So you just got to engage.
Totally agree. Makes perfect sense. And Justin, before we go, can you provide your contact information in case people want to reach you?
Absolutely, yeah. So my company is Bright Path Notes, and our website is brightpathnotes.com, BRIGHTPATHNOTES.com, and my direct line is actually 317-855-8501. That's 317-855-8501. My email address is justin@brightpathnotes.com.
Joe, do you want to give real quick information on how you can be reached as well?
Sure, absolutely. And guys, I just want to say I look forward to seeing you all on May 19th and 20th at the Indiana State Indiana State Conference. It's going to be great. And anybody has any questions for me, just feel free to just email me at Joe, Joe, at noteschool, NOTESCHOOL.com. Joe at noteschool.com.
Thank you very much, Joe. And this week we have a new member orientation meeting on Wednesday. It's open to non-members to attend as well, so you can find out what CIREIA is all about. Also, if you want to find out what's happening in other parts of Indiana as well as learn about different investing strategies, you should plan to attend the May 19th and 20th Indiana State RIA Conference we talked about at the Broadmoor Country Club. For more about our group and events we're involved with, please go to www.cireia.org. Once again, I wanted to thank Justin and Joe and Brett as well. We appreciate you listening, and we'll talk to you again next week.